Sunday, the 29th of April, 1945, 1 week before the end of World War II in Europe. The US 7th Army's 45th Infantry Division liberates Dachau, the first regular concentration camp built by the Nazi government. The soldiers smell not only human excrement, but also decaying bodies, causing many of them to cry or vomit as they find piles of impossibly malnourished corpses. More than 30 railroad cars filled with thousands of dead bodies, and 30,000 survivors, most of them severely emaciated, who look like walking skeletons. Thousands of them are sick, and would die from typhus epidemics and starvation during the months following the camp's liberation. One of the main perpetrators of these atrocities is Fritz Becher. Fritz Becher was born on the 29th of October 1904 in Landsberg am Lech, then part of the German Empire. He got married, had one child, and like millions of other Germans, witnessed Germany's economic collapse during the Great Depression, beginning in 1929. The crisis resulted in widespread unemployment and poverty, and also led to an increase in crime. The economic misery, fear of a worsening future, and frustration with the government's apparent failure to manage the situation created a fertile ground for Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party's rise. These came into power on the 30th of January 1933, when President Paul von Hindenburg appointed Hitler the Chancellor of Germany. Immediately after Hitler came to power, Germany became a dictatorship, and the Nazi regime quickly began to restrict the civil and human rights of Jews, and established the first concentration camps, imprisoning its political opponents, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, and others classified as dangerous. Unlike prisons, with which they are often inaccurately compared today, concentration camps were independent of any judicial review. The first such camp, Dachau, was established in March 1933, less than 2 months after Hitler became the Chancellor. During the first year, the camp had a capacity of 5,000 prisoners. Initially, the internees were primarily German communists, social democrats, trade unionists, and other political opponents of the Nazi regime. However, over time, other groups were also interned in Dachau, such as Jehovah's Witnesses, Roma and Sinti people, homosexuals, repeat criminal offenders, as well as so-called asocials, whom the regime incarcerated because they could not, or would not, find gainful employment. During the early years, relatively few Jews were interned in Dachau, and then usually only because they belonged to one of the aforementioned groups, or had completed prison sentences after being convicted for violating the 1935 Nuremberg laws, which put Nazi ideas about race into law. In early 1937, the SS, using prisoner labor, began the construction of a large complex of buildings on the grounds of the original camp. Prisoners were forced to do this work, starting with the destruction of the old munitions factory under terrible conditions. The construction was officially completed in mid-August 1938. The Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939 when Germany invaded Poland, and by this time Becher had already been detained at Dachau concentration camp as a political prisoner, where he arrived in May 1938. Upon his arrival, the camp authorities appointed him as a Kapo, a functional prisoner responsible for overseeing and managing other inmates. Initially, Becher became a room supervisor, and later the head of a block where priests, especially those of Polish nationality, were held. His duties included ensuring that everything in his block was clean and orderly, distributing food, and taking prisoners to the hospital if they were sick. However, Becher despised the priests, and instead of helping and assisting them, he mistreated them daily. According to witnesses, he kicked one priest in the stomach while using abusive language. Another time he beat Father Soto, a Polish priest, and kicked him until he was unconscious. He also mistreated Father Kowaliński, a Polish priest over 55 years of age, by hitting him so hard that his nose and mouth bled, and he had to be carried to the hospital. 3 or 4 days later, the priest died from his injuries. The cause of death was recorded as stopping of the heart and circulation due to bowel inflammation. Becher also conducted so-called sport exercises, which were a true torment for the prisoners already weakened by camp life. These exercises were physically demanding and intended to exhaust, punish, and humiliate the priests. Becher forced them to perform special exercises, and from the 27th of March to the 7th of April, 1942, from Palm Sunday until Easter Sunday from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., with some time off for dinner. During these drill periods, he beat the prisoners, and as a result of the grueling exercise and beatings, 8 priests died. When the priests failed in the exercises, he would push and kick them with his feet. When Becher beat the priests, an SS man was present, providing supervision and reinforcement for Becher's authority. Becher often threatened to send the priests to invalid transports, which meant being sent to extermination camps, a known death sentence. The harsh conditions, constant abuse, and lack of medical care led to the deaths of about 400 priests, while Becher was in charge of the priests' block. Becher was then transferred from the priests' block to the Russian block, a section where Soviet prisoners of war and other Russian-speaking inmates were held. These prisoners often faced especially harsh treatment due to the Nazi ideology, which viewed Slavs as inferior, and Soviet prisoners of war as particularly despised enemies. Conditions in the Russian bloc were brutal, with inadequate food, shelter, and medical care, leading to high mortality rates. On one occasion, Becher beat a young Russian severely with a piece of wood, and at another time, he smashed a Russian in the face with his fist. Dachau concentration camp was liberated on the 29th of April, 1945, by units of the 45th Infantry Division. Private John Lee, who took part in the liberation, later recalled, "We had seen men in battle blown apart, burned to death, and die in many different ways. But we were never prepared for this. Several of the dead lay there with their eyes open, a picture I will never get out of my mind. It seems they were looking at us and saying, 'What took you so long?'" Out of over 200,000 people who were imprisoned in Dachau and its numerous subsidiary camps during its 12-year existence, between 1933 and 1945, nearly 42,000 people were murdered. After World War II, which ended in Europe on the 8th of May 1945, Fritz Becher was tried at the Dachau camp trial held by the United States Army on the premises of a former Dachau concentration camp. The trial took place from the 15th of November to the 13th of December 1945, and 40 officials were charged with war crimes in connection with the Dachau concentration camp and its subcamps. The trial ended with 40 convictions, including 36 death sentences, of which 28 were carried out. During the trial, Becher claimed he never beat anyone to death and only slapped a prisoner now and then, stating that he himself would otherwise have been punished. He added that he never kicked anyone, but acknowledged that he might have caused nosebleeds and slapped some priests in the face. He also mentioned that during his stay at the Russian bloc, he corrected the inmates by beating them with his hands only. His lies, however, did not help him escape justice. On the 13th of December 1945, the US military tribunal found Fritz Becher guilty, and along with 35 other co-defendants, sentenced him to death by hanging. The court considered his cruel actions, including the severe mistreatment of prisoners that led to a death, and harsh punishments that resulted in deaths of several priests. On the 29th of May 1946, when Becher was hanged at Landsberg War Criminals Prison, he was 41 years old. There were no tears shed for Fritz Becher. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.